Hello everyone. I created a petition for everyone out there to sign. It says, "We, the undersigned, see the Fed as a huge threat to our way of life and national security. Since the Fed's creation in 1913, the dollar has lost more than 96% of its value, and by recklessly inflating the money supply, the Fed continues to distort interest rates and intentionally erodes the value of the dollar as by printing trillions of dollars of fiat currency without the consent of the people. Without a currency backed by gold, we will see hyperinflation and major destabilization of our economic system, massive unemployment, and chaos in the streets. We ask the administration to bring a gold-backed currency from the U.S. Treasury to replace the fiat dollar." Now, if you would like to learn more about the Federal Reserve, you can read Modern Money Mechanics. Okay, it's a free download. You can also check out the page that I have here. It says Truth About the Federal Reserve. It says Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution states that Congress shall have the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Today, however, the Fed, which is a privately owned company, controls and profits from printing money through the Treasury and regulating its value. The Fed began with approximately 300 people or banks that became owners in the Federal Reserve banking system. They make up the international banking cartel of wealth beyond comparison. The Fed banking system collects billions of dollars in interest annually and distributes the profits to its shareholders. The Congress illegally gave the Fed the right to print money at no interest to the Fed. The Fed creates money from nothing and loans it back to us through banks and charges interest on our currency. The Fed also buys government debt with the money printed on a printing press and charges U.S. taxpayers interest. Many congressmen and presidents say this is a fraud. Who actually owns the Federal Reserve central banks? The ownership of the 12 central banks, a very well kept secret, has been revealed. The Rothschild Bank of London, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Lehman Brothers of New York, Lazar Brothers of Paris, Kuhn Loeb Bank of New York, Israel Mosses Seif Banks of Italy, Goldman Sachs of New York, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam, Chase Manhattan Bank of New York. These bankers are connected to London banking houses which ultimately control the Fed, which England lost the Revolutionary War with America. They plan to control us by controlling our banking system, the printing of our money, and our debt. The individuals listed below own banks, which in turn own shares in the Fed. The banks listed below have significant control over the New York Fed District, which controls the other 11 Fed districts. These banks also are partly foreign-owned and control the New York Fed District Bank. Okay? Now, this is from the Zeitgeist movies. If you haven't seen them yet, I recommend Zeitgeist Addendum and Zeitgeist Moving Forward. Also, I'll place all these links down in the description so you'll be able to learn more about the Federal Reserve. Now, this is a man who wants to end the Federal Reserve, Ron Paul. If anyone out there who's ever heard of this guy, if you haven't, I recommend that you look this guy up. He's all over YouTube, all over the web, internet. I mean, he's everywhere now. Okay, there's no greater threat to the security and prosperity of the United States today than an out-of-control, secretive Federal Reserve. Imagine that parents overwhelmed by debt and months behind on their bills sent their spendthrift teenagers out each weekend for a night on the town with credit cards and blank checks. Would anyone be surprised that this family never got their finances under control? Yet that is how a government which is almost $15 trillion in the red behaves by entrusting taxpayers' financial futures to the Federal Reserve, which pumps money into the economy whenever it chooses and makes secret deals with Wall Street executives, foreign central banks, and other politically connected insiders without any significant oversight from Congress. Snuck through Congress on Christmas Eve in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act established the Fed as America's central bank. The Fed essentially creates money out of thin air, manipulates interest rates, and interferes with the free market. By doing so, the Fed fuels our economy's boom-bust cycle, and has helped devalue our dollar by over 95%. According to the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Branch's own website, what you could buy with $1 in 1913 would now cost you $22.55. Although Congress and the Treasury helped bring about the housing bubble and financial collapse with legislation, regulations and keeping the funds flowing to reckless institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the Fed was the main cause of the crisis. Its interference in settling interest rates distorted the market, and status as the lender of last resort. Insured banks could hook individuals and businesses for loans on projects that weren't in as high demand as forecasters believed. When the crash occurred, common sense dictated a change in policy, but the Federal Reserve only increased its lending and intervention to historic highs, while selling Americans a bill of goods that the economy would never recover without unprecedented bailouts. We now know that at the peak of its emergency lending, the Fed was providing nearly 90% of its discount window loans to foreign banks. This included making over 70 loans to a bank partially owned by the Bank of Libya. The Fed was able to get away with these actions because Congress lacks the authority to thoroughly and completely audit it. In fact, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke appeared before Congress early in the crisis and was able to refuse a direct request to disclose which institutions were receiving trillions of taxpayer dollars from the Fed. Now, if you'd like to read the rest of this, you can do so at your own time. But, this petition that I created, I know it's a long shot. I know it might be impossible to end the Fed by creating a petition, but it's a good start. It's something we can all do. It only takes maybe a minute to sign it, and we could share it with all of our friends and family and get this out there, because it's something that we can, stand behind, and we need to support, at least trying to get the Fed ended. I know Ron Paul would definitely want to end the Fed. He's someone he strongly supports the U.S. Constitution. I know it's a step forward, but we still have to go through a transition. And transition is, the first thing is ending the Fed, bringing the troops home, ending these wars. Then we can move on to bigger and better things. And hopefully we'll have a resource-based economy sometime in the near future. But for now, we got a lot of problems to solve. And if you don't know what a resource-based economy is, you can always check out the Zeitgeist films, watch Zeitgeist Moving Forward or Zeitgeist Addendum, which also, Zeitgeist Addendum explains the Federal Reserve much more clearly than most films do. And of course, I'll have this link here, The Truth About the Federal Reserve. It has a documentary film called Fiat Empire, right? How the Federal Reserve is unconstitutional. It's an excellent film. You'll be able to learn a hell of a lot about the Federal Reserve and how much it affects our economy. So, if you want to learn more, check out this page. Learn more about Ron Paul. Learn more about the Zeitgeist films. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me. But I'm pretty sure that this page right here will answer a lot of your questions. So take care of everybody. And